When Madison Carter first heard the phrase, "love changes your brain," she thought it was just a poetic metaphor. She was sitting in a quiet corner of a coffee shop in Austin, Texas, sipping on her cappuccino while her friend Daniel Gray, a psychology professor, explained how human connections shape the mind in ways most people never notice. Daniel had a way of speaking that made complex ideas feel like late-night confessions rather than lectures. Madison leaned in, intrigued, and that's when he told her something that would later shape the way she understood her own relationships. "Love," he said, "doesn't just live in your heart. It rewires your brain like a careful architect redesigning a home." The idea stuck with Madison, not just because Daniel was persuasive, but because she was living through her own complicated chapter of love. She had been dating Aaron Thompson for nearly 3 years. They had moved in together the previous summer, and everything on the surface looked perfect. They laughed often, shared responsibilities, even had a Sunday morning ritual of making blueberry pancakes while listening to old jazz records. But beneath the easy smiles, Madison sometimes felt a quiet tension she couldn't name. It wasn't about fights, they hardly had those. It was about a strange feeling that their closeness was both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. One rainy afternoon, Madison found herself in the psychology section of a local bookstore, flipping through a book Daniel had once recommended. It described how being in love can activate the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine, the same chemical involved when we achieve a hard-earned goal or indulge in a favorite treat. But the fascinating part was how it also increased levels of oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which builds trust and connection. This wasn't just poetry, it was biology. Madison began to think back to moments with Aaron, how holding his hand during a stressful meeting with her parents made her feel calmer, how simply hearing his laugh could shift her mood on bad days. Without realizing it, her body had been responding to his presence, like a safe harbor. But then came the paradox Daniel had warned her about. The same intense bonds that bring comfort can also spark vulnerability. In a quiet conversation over dinner, Madison confessed to Aaron that sometimes she worried about losing herself in their relationship. She admitted that her identity felt like it was melting into his, and while part of her loved the intimacy, another part feared the dependency. Aaron, thoughtful as always, listened without defensiveness. He surprised her by saying he felt something similar, that the deeper they got, the harder it was to remember where one ended and the other began. They agreed to give each other more space for personal growth, understanding that love wasn't about merging into one person, but about standing side by side as two complete individuals. Over the next few months, Madison started noticing small psychological shifts in their dynamic. When they supported each other's independence, Aaron taking a solo hiking trip, Madison enrolling in an evening photography class, their connection actually deepened. She realized that absence, when approached with trust, could make love more resilient. Daniel later explained this to her in scientific terms. Time apart allows the brain's longing and reward circuits to reactivate, making reunions more emotionally satisfying. Madison thought of it like tending a fire. Too much closeness without space could smother the flame, but just enough oxygen kept it burning bright. Another surprising truth Madison uncovered was how much communication style influenced emotional security. She and Aaron began practicing what psychologists call active listening, fully focusing on each other's words without mentally rehearsing their own responses. At first, it felt awkward, almost staged. But over time, it became second nature. Arguments transformed from defensive battles into collaborative problem-solving sessions. Madison noticed her stress levels stayed lower after disagreements, almost as if her brain had learned that conflict wasn't a threat, but an opportunity for clarity. The science behind it fascinated her. When couples listen actively, they reduce cortisol spikes, the stress hormone, and increase empathy, which strengthens relationship bonds. Madison's curiosity led her down another path of discovery, the role of shared experiences in shaping relationship memories. She and Aaron started intentionally creating emotional landmarks, weekend trips to places neither had been, volunteering together at a community garden, even cooking complicated recipes that ended in laughter and burnt pans. Daniel explained that novelty triggers the brain's dopamine system, which can rekindle passion even in long-term relationships. The more Madison learned, the more she realized love wasn't just a feeling, it was a skill, something you could nurture with awareness and intention. But not all lessons were comfortable. Madison learned that the brain often remembers emotionally charged moments, both good and bad, more vividly than neutral ones. That meant careless words during arguments could leave deeper imprints than she imagined. She started choosing her language more carefully, focusing on expressing feelings rather than assigning blame. Aaron noticed the change, and he mirrored it, leading to a more respectful and loving environment. It wasn't about avoiding all conflict, it was about fighting in a way that built trust instead of eroding it. There was also the matter of gratitude, something so simple, yet profoundly effective. Madison read about studies showing that couples who regularly expressed appreciation had stronger and longer-lasting relationships. She began telling Aaron specific things she valued about him. Not just, "I love you," but "I love how you make me laugh when I'm stressed," or "I appreciate how you always make my coffee just the way I like it." Aaron reciprocated, and those small affirmations acted like threads, weaving their days together more tightly. One evening, while sitting under the twinkling lights of their small backyard, Madison realized how much she had changed since that first conversation with Daniel. She no longer saw love as a mysterious force that either blessed or abandoned people. She saw it as a living, breathing system, part biology, part psychology, part daily choice. It was the quiet acts of understanding, the patience during uncomfortable growth, the intentional moments of joy that kept it alive. When she met Daniel for coffee again months later, she told him about everything she'd learned and experienced. He smiled knowingly and said, "That's the thing about love. Most people think it's about finding the right person, but really, it's about becoming the right partner." Madison nodded, finally understanding the depth of that truth. Her relationship with Aaron wasn't perfect. It never would be, but it was real, grounded in both emotional connection and the quiet wisdom of psychology. And perhaps the most surprising fact of all was that the more she understood love's inner workings, the more magical it felt.